You are listening to Fox Radio 910 and 104.3. Welcome to Front Porch Tales, sponsored by Crowning Touch Senior Moving Services of Roanoke, Virginia. My name is Linda Balentine, the president of Crowning Touch and your host for this series. I travel into the mountains to interview the people of Appalachia and collect their share of memories. So now, we invite you to sit a spell with us and listen to stories, both historical and current, that emanate from the heart of Appalachia. All right, Lester, here we are again with Front Porch Tales, another episode. And I see now that the stove is damping down a little bit. The snowflakes have quit falling. It's starting to warm up just a little bit. Bo, the dog, is still nestled at your feet. But we're going to talk about something that will warm our hearts in spite of this chilly day out here in the mountains in Appalachia. And that is, we're going to talk about maple syrup making, the whole deal.
Ooh, syrup time.
Yes, huh? Syrup time. And that was a huge deal. Oh. And these mountains especially.
It still is.
Yes, it still is.
It still is.
So we're talking mainly about Highland County. Yeah. Do they do it? Are they doing it in Bath County?
Not that I'm aware of.
There's a preponderance. Franklin County has a preponderance of maple trees, but
it's being done over in West Virginia in a couple of counties and so forth. But it's being done here. Basically, let's bring this into focus about maple syrup. Okay?
Good.
Maple syrup. Okay, folks. It was never the intent from the old timers. There was no such thing as maple syrup. The reason that they did this and did any kind of gathering of sugar water and so forth was to make sugar. Sugar was something that they didn't have, that had to be imported and brought here and be purchased.
Okay.
Or they could make it. And the process of making syrup was you didn't stop cooking at the syrup stage. You kept on going until the water was completely evaporated out of the sugar water, and the only thing that was left was sugar.
So the Indians actually did that because they would come through and put birch cones. You know, when they would come through. When would that have been? It might have been in the fall, and then they would check back in the spring.
It was always the spring. The spring is the only time that the trees run.
All righty, but they would come back and check. You know, they were traveling.
Yes,
and they would wait. They would do it for the sugars, just like you said.
At that time, the mountains. None of the tribes lived here. They
hunted.
This was summer ground hunting.
Right. Okay.
And gathering.
Right.
And different tribes from the Shawnee Cherokees to the Ohio and the Miamisburgs to all the tribes from down on the Roanokes. Anyway,
yeah,
all the different tribes would come here for all through the Appalachians in the summertime, and it was cooler. Less insects, right? Because in the lower land areas, it was hotter, more insects, more stuff going on.
Right.
This is the place they hunted and gathered, and for the summer times, because it was a cooler place to be. As a matter of fact, the early settlers, the early folks, back in the 20s when there was no air conditioning and so forth, coming here in the summertime where it was cooler in the mountains was a luxury for the wealthy.
Right.
But anyway, it was in the springtime is when, after that long, hard winter of living on hard cider and sucking hard cider helps the winters go through. And keeping warm and getting through the winter. When spring started to break and the early thaws started to happen is when the sap would start to run in the trees.
Right.
And when the sap starts running, early sap runs in the trees is when the sugar in the roots in the trees would start to come up into the tree. It's the only time that the tree has that much sugar. It develops and stores it during the winter and releases it to the new buds in the springtime.
And different trees have different sugar content. In other words, the maple is a high sugar content, but walnut trees have sugar.
They all have sugar.
Yes. But there was one tree that they got in the habit of tapping, and that was the sugar maple tree?
Exactly. Sugar maple tree.
Okay.
And that's the tree you basically, soft maple has sugar water, but not, and like you said, in the concentrations of that the sugar maples do.
Which is about 40 gallons of sugar water to make 1 gallon of syrup.
Okay, well, this is how it works. The very first runs of the sugar tree is the highest concentration of sugar.
Okay.
And the sap. I'm using the wrong word. It's not sap. It's water.
Right.
Sugar water.
Right.
Where it first comes up. The percentages of 2% is considered a high sugar volume.
Wow.
So if you think about 2%, how much water is it going to take to get, a gallon of sugar? Of syrup.
Right.
At the very beginning of water or sugar water collecting the water, you may probably might be 30 to 50 gallons or 45, 50 gallons of water to get 1 gallon of syrup. As the season progresses and there's less sugar being fed to the buds, the new buds and the new growth, the percentage of sugar in that water decreases. So now it's not 40 or 50 gallons to get a gallon of syrup.
Yeah.
Now it's 60 to 80 gallons to get a gallon of syrup, to the point that where it becomes too much work to profit, to make it worthwhile. There's just too much energy to try to get a gallon of syrup. There's a cutoff point.
And doesn't that coincide with the warmer temperatures? In other words, you need freezing temperatures at night and warmer temperatures in the daytime. But after a while, it's not going down to freezing anymore, and then it basically stops running.
It will always run.
Okay.
But what happens is the water then starts to pick up the minerals and other things that roots are starting to draw other nutrients that it needs.
Okay, wow.
And the clear water now starts to become milky.
Oh, and so that's a dead giveaway.
That's a dead giveaway.
Okay.
And the other is if you're testing or when you're boiling, you pretty well knew, because you're sitting there boiling all day and you've been hauling water all day and you've been filling your evaporator pan and cooking it off, and now you're going, it's taking more and more and more water just to get that 1 gallon of syrup. You're knowing that the trees are coming to the end of their what they're going to give you.
So the height of the season might be February into March.
It's so crazy.
Well, it's not January in the mountains because it's too cold.
Usually, but what's happening is our weather's changing.
That's right, it is.
We don't have the cold weather we used to have. Like we were talking before in some of these conversations, that we had snow on and back in November, and it didn't go off until April.
Right.
Okay. Well, the weather's changed. And it's not, we're getting more milder winters and so forth. So everything's changed.
How does that affect the maple syrup runs?
It's really impacted it, because you need real hard, cold winters to force, that the trees are really making, storing up nutrients in their roots, because trees grows the most in the wintertime. Most people don't realize. It's when it's setting the roots out and developing and growing the roots and strengthening the tree so that it's getting ready to take all that nutrients and the growth and put it up into the tree and to the buds for it to go through its cycle.
Wow.
And so it's so different. There's no formula. There's nothing that you're going to sit here and guarantee anything. It just happens to be the good Lord runs it and does the trees operate and do their thing however they want to do it, when they want to do it.
So what do? You run a few test trees to watch you put the spiles in and just watch it drip before you hook up the hoses, and you'll talk about the new system.
That's the new system.
I'm going
to talk the old-timey way.
Good. So it was spiles, which are spouts.
Spiles and buckets.
Alrighty. So
anyway, your whole life here's. So anyway, we're going to get into how we do it.
Okay.
So if we go out there and we drill into the tree, And the main things, you're not have to go very far, only like within an inch. But, because once again, we're going to remember that layer I was talking maybe back in the episode called a cambium layer, the layer of the tree.
Right.
That inside the hard bark, inside there's a green area. That's where all the water and everything in the tree, that's where it's going.
That's the highway.
Up. That's the highway.
Right.
It's like that's the vein.
Right.
You have to tap into that vein with a spile that has holes in it.
Right.
You drill a hole in there by hand with your auger, tap that in there. You have a hook on the bottom of your spile that holds a bucket, and you hook it in there. Now, if you tap the tree too early, the hole will dry out before it will even have an opportunity to run.
Oh, okay.
So it's a timing, you know. But at the same time, you don't want to be out there if the weather turns bad and you're climbing all around the mountains and try, in your sugar orchard. You want to have it open so you're catching the whole run. You don't want one or two buckets. What's good? That is not going to make anything. You need to open up your sugar bush.
And the sugar bush is your orchard.
Is your orchard, all the trees.
Okay.
Whatever is all the trees you're going to use that you're going to collect sugar water from to boil down to make your sugar.
Okay.
Or make your syrup. And so that's your sugar bush. So it's a timing thing. I've found, and doing syrup for years and years, that to be open by the 5th of February to catch the early run, because remember we were talking about sugar content.
Right.
You want to catch the very first runs.
You don't want to miss it.
You don't want to miss it. It's your key. It's the whole difference between, less fuel to use to cook it down in time to get what you're after.
You don't want to work yourself to death.
You don't work yourself to death, and you're going to work yourself to death regardless.
Anyway.
And people are saying, well, how come it's $65 a gallon, $70 a gallon? Well, come with me on a sugar bush adventure from start to finish, and you'll say, how come you're not charging $300 a gallon? Because even at those prices, you're not really paying for your time and your effort.
No.
But your whole deal is, in the spring of the year when everything starts going to thawing, you want to get out there and you want to start just opening your sugar bush. And so you go out and you start drilling your trees, depending on the size of the trees, because you aren't hurting a tree. It's like a mosquito biting you. It's not going to kill you. It's going to suck some blood out of you. And basically, it's tree blood.
But there is a recipe for the girth of a tree. You generally don't hit up a tree that's less than 12 inches or whatever it is, up to, there's so many buckets that are allowed to be.
You don't want it. You're not trying to, the sugar bush is your life.
Right.
We're in a symbolic relationship. Everything here in these woods, your orchards, your farm, your gardens, it's a partnership. It's a balance. You're in a partnership.
Yep.
You have to look at it. You're caring for the very things that the good Lord's given us to take care of us. You're treating it with respect, and it's life to those.
Right. So you're not going to suck your trees dry, and they're very careful.
Abuse it. You're trying to not being greedy. You're getting what you need, and that's good enough. And let the trees live.
Right.
And do their thing. It's what's good for them. So you're open. You're tapping. I've had old maple trees, hundreds and hundreds of years old, that are on the end of their life, and the inside of the tree, the hardwood, is already basically rotted out of them. There's openings inside the tree.
Well,
and you could actually look up inside, and there was hardly a spot that you couldn't see a healed tap.
Wow.
Where a spile had been. Thousands and thousands of spiles over hundreds of years where it was tapped.
Wow.
Amazing thing. I wish I'd taken.
Yeah, that's very cool because I never
pictures of it, because it's something you'd never see or think about,
But it speaks to your point that you don't really kill or hurt the tree if you do it with discernment.
Once you pull your spiles in a proper time and you take it and you plug the holes.
Oh, okay.
The tree is protected. No insects can get in it. You protect the life of the sugar tree.
What do you plug the holes with? I didn't even know about that.
Piece of wood, a wooden plug.
Oh, okay.
That's all it takes, and it'll grow right over it.
Well, for goodness sake.
Doesn't hurt anything at all.
Wow.
So you can also leave it open. The tree will heal up just like a natural wound.
Right.
Storm events and so forth, break limbs and so forth off, and the tree heals.
Right.
It's a mosquito bite. But anyway, so I'm going to give you, we were in the Valley House. This is the old time gathering method. So we would put our spiles in a certain period of time, and then we'd hang our buckets. And then by that time, before we hung our buckets and all that, you had to have your sugar house. So you had a building that was dedicated to making where you're going to boil down and cook down the sugar water to get your syrup or your sugar, depending on what you were making. So you had a pan, you got an evaporator pan, just a big old pan that was made usually out of stainless steel.
How big was it?
Usually it was about 4 foot wide by about
6 feet long.
6 feet, 8 feet long, and about a rim on it that was probably it was about 12 inches tall.
Okay.
And it would take several, maybe a barrel or whatever, a couple barrels of. Maybe 100 gallons of water, 150 gallons of water, anywhere from 75 to 150 gallons of water, and you would have your firewood and all that. You had a rock. You made up your fire pit where you set your pan on. You had to have something to set it on. So we'd build that out of rock. We'd build a rock foundation around for the pan, and then we'd have a flue at the end of it for where the fire and the smoke and all that, the heat could go out and vent out. And your pan would sit on top of it, and you had an open fire in front of it, so the pan created the top. The sides were rock, and then it was open in the front where you fed the fire with your firewood.
Gotcha. And
it would and you wanted to get your pan to a boil, because that's what we're doing. We're boiling off the water. We're boiling off water from the sugar. We want the sugar.
Right.
Okay, so we have one person that's going to be in the sugar house
with a paddle,
continually stirring the sugar water to keep up the sugar, because sugar's heavier than water. You don't want the sugar sitting on the bottom of the pan and burning,
right.
Because if it does, then it darkens your syrup.
Right. Okay.
And it'll turn. You can even get dark, pitch dark. That's where the colors come from.
Right. Okay.
Of the syrup. So you stir that. And also, the other thing is, too, we never added sugar water to our pan.
Okay.
We filled the pan up, and we boiled it all the way down to syrup in order to get the best flavor and the clearest amber color, pretty syrup we could get.
Okay. So you got the viscosity that you wanted, and then you would actually drain that out, clean that pan, and start again.
We would dump off the syrup into gather it into half-gallon cannon jars, and we usually get a gallon of syrup off of that pan per boil.
Gosh.
So it was an all-day boil. We boiled 2 times. We did it 2 times. We do it all morning, all day long, while other people were going to the trees carrying the buckets. Now, we're not talking. Didn't have wagons and horses, which a lot of people that did, the old folks that were more equipped
or had a bigger bush
would put it on wagons. If it was summertime, they put it on on wintertime when you had snow out there, they had sleds that they loaded on, and the horses would pull the sleds to the sugar camp.
Right.
And that's how you gathered the sugar water. In our regard, we had 5-gallon buckets hung on a bunch of trees, and we'd carry them all day long.
Wow.
To fill the pan.
Now, could you get it done at the end of a day? You didn't have to cook it at night?
Oh, no, as long as the trees are running.
So you're still doing it.
If the trees are running all night long, you're running all night long.
Oh, my gosh. So you had to.
So when the trees started running, it all happens, and it's going on now. There's no tomorrow. There's not, hey, I'll just put it off. We'll get it tomorrow. No, that doesn't work that way. The trees are running all night long. So are you.
Because you don't want to go to your buckets and find that they've been overflowing.
They're overrunning. You're just wasting what are you doing this for? So we'd go in and into the sugar camp when they were boiling it down. We'd fill the pan up, and then we had open barrels next to it, and we'd fill the 55-gallon barrels that had no tops on. We'd take tops on them. We'd fill those up, and we'd be prepared to fill the pan again once that run was done, or that cook-off was done. We get the syrup off that and start all over again.
So you took shifts.
There were shifts, and there were shifts of all day long and all night long.
After the wood was all piled up, so you had somebody feeding the fire all the time.
The person that was in running the boiling, we rotated of carrying to cooking.
Right.
And so,
wow.
And then when it went on, it was nonstop. So let me tell you something. By the end of sugar, a maple syrup production,
right,
you were totally finished, exhausted. It was how much you could endure.
Right.
And so that year, we made 19 gallons by hand, carrying buckets and so forth, which was, if you times 19 gallons by 80, 100.
Yeah.
We cooked down almost 2,000 gallons of water.
Wow.
That we hand carried from, I'm talking, the furthest tree was probably 100 yards away.
Did you go uphill and downhill?
No, we were lucky that the trees are in the bottom, and right there in the bottom, next to the house.
Wow.
And they were old trees. But it was like we had 3 or 4 buckets on each tree. You could carry 2 5-gallon buckets at a time. 5 times 8 is 40. It was 40 pounds per bucket that we'd be carrying, 80 to 2 buckets. So you're thinking, including the ladies.
Yeah, right.
This isn't just men carrying them.
Oh no, we were tough when we were young.
Tough people,
we were very
hardcore tough people. So maple syrup time. And then all of a sudden you're sitting there, you're working your doggone tails off. That's how that was done, old-timey method. Yeah. Same way the Indians did it, the same way the early settlers did it. That's how they collected them, whether it was out of, birch, out of bark or reed baskets or whatever baskets they made, to whatever buckets, however you collected it. I mean, it was hand collected. It was cooked down.
Did you have some filter? Excuse me, I want to know if did you have a cheesecloth filter? What did you do? Did you get any insects in there? Did you get anything else in there? You weren't covering a 5-gallon bucket with a lid.
They do have covers, the
for the
other
galvanized.
Ones, they did have a galvanized cover that was on the top to help keep the water out and stuff. We weren't that fortunate.
Yeah, because if it rained or something, then you were spoiling your.
It was you didn't want rain on it, so sometimes we'd find whatever we could to cover it. Was the feed sack or something just to keep the rain off of it and keep the insects out of it. But usually that time of year, you're not dealing with insects.
Right.
It's too cold for them. They're not out.
Were there any predator animals that liked the sugar water?
They're one of the worst.
A bear? Was he asleep?
Sure, anything. Bear at that time would be still haven't coming out.
Right.
They were still hibernating, and there wasn't a lot of bear around at that time. The biggest predator that we had were squirrels.
For goodness sake.
They absolutely loved it. And even today, it's one of the biggest problems that, sugar bush people have, using the plastic lines and the new methods of gathering, that the squirrels will eat through your lines and be drinking the sweet sugar water. They loved it.
Yeah.
They absolutely love it. But, so you do all that. And then, some of the treats of all that and all that hard work as you have snow out there, just when it's all cooking down and it's getting towards syrup, you would get a little ladle, and a ladle was a little, everybody would know what a ladle is,
sure,
like ladling soup and so forth. Well, we'd ladle a little bit of syrup out into the ladle, and we take it and we just cast it out into the snow
and make clinkers.
That's
right. It was just maple syrup candy, hard candy.
It was hard candy.
Isn't that something?
The snow would instantly cool the syrup and it would solidify and it would be candy. And the kids would be, they'd have a blast. Well, another thing that people don't realize we used to do, we used to cook hot dogs and stuff in the boiling sugar water.
Oh, come on.
Yes. And we'd have hot dogs. And because you're there all night.
I know, but it didn't affect the flavor of any of the sugar water?
It didn't hurt it at all.
Oh, I think you could have sold it special gourmet syrup, hot dog flavored.
This was for us. None of this was for sale.
That's right.
And it was, this is something that people did.
Right.
I mean, when we were talking, in one of our interviews we might have had is, Thanksgiving dinner and cooking. Well, there you go. That's how it come about, is they use sugar water and stuff like that, and honey and all that good stuff, sweet cider from apple or maple syrup. was a big part of cooking in the Appalachians.
That's right.
Oh my gosh.
It was a huge flavoring agent.
Oh,
I used it in
Lord.
apple pies. We used anything that you needed a sweetener for. You could put it in your coffee. I mean, that was all we used.
That's all we used. That honey.
That's right.
That was our sweetener.
That's right.
So now if you take the syrup and you kept cooking it down until the water comes out of it, and it's a really neat thing to do. You can do it at home on the stove with regular syrup. Regular sugar if you want to watch how the process happens. But you cook the water out of it, and to the point it gets thick enough where it becomes syrup.
Mm-hmm.
Or you go a little bit further, and there's just a certain point that all of a sudden it starts to foam up. It looks like it's getting ready to foam up, and it has to be done quickly and taken off immediately. All of a sudden it'll foam up and collapses, and you have to have it off quickly and dump it out, and it solidifies and crystallizes right into sugar.
And candy makers use a candy thermometer to check that exact.
Now we're getting down to when we're a little bit, more modern.
To get to that exact point. That's right. But that was just the treasure. Part of making maple syrup it was a poetic.
It's spring ritual.
It was bringing the outdoors in, the treasure of the outdoors.
It's reawakening from the winter.
That's right. And you were refining the essence that winter had pulled together for you.
We made another one. We survived another one.
I know. It was the refining of the winter experience and disseminating it,
the old folks, my wife's grandmother, was telling me about, them, because there was no stores. The only thing they went for stores is flour and certain things.
Right.
When the spring came, it was life to them because guess what? They ate anything green that came up.
Yep, the sprouts of anything.
And you're sitting here, what do you mean they ate anything? Yeah, dandelions. How do you think they learned how to eat dandelion greens and other greens? It wasn't just that. Anything green, because that gave them vitamin C. They came out of winter, eating all of the meats and taters and everything else. And they had no fresh vegetables. The fresh greeneries were gone.
There are vitamins in syrup. Do you know what they are? I don't know. We've got just a little bit of time here.
I have to be ignorant in this
I know,
part.
but there are minerals. In other words, it's not just a sugar shot.
Absolutely.
It's not just a sugar shot. You're capturing the essence of the tree's life, and it's life to us as well.
Absolutely.
Lester, I just want to thank you for being with us during this time.
Thank you for having me.
And we are going to do it again, maybe around the stove again.
Wow, cool.
All right, dear.
Sounds good.
God bless you. Thank you.
God bless you.
You've been listening to Front Porch Tales, courtesy of Crowning Touch Senior Moving Services of Roanoke, Virginia, the only moving company with a consignment shop, auction house, and real estate division. We are a one-stop shop for any senior making a move. Check out our website at crowningtouchusa.com. Or if you are planning a move, call Anna at 540-982-5800 to arrange a free estimate. Our consignment shop is open Tuesday through Saturday, and we accept items on appointment and offer pickup and delivery. And don't forget to check out our monthly browse and bid auctions at 6712 Williamson Road, Roanoke, where you can bid online on over 1,700 items each month. Meanwhile, let's get back together next Friday at noon for more Appalachian Tales from the Front Porch on Fox 910 and 104.3.